Hello and welcome back to the channel. We're going to take a little flight. This one is an interesting one from Bahrain over to Abu Dhabi. Kind of a quick flight, 270 nautical miles on the meter, 48 minutes air to, takeoff to touchdown, wheels up to wheels down. So we're here at Terminal 4 in the parking spot. We're pretty much ready to go. So we'll do our call for the pushback and we'll get things started, and we'll have kind of the map up here. So we're going to take off on runway 30 right, which is this guy. So I don't really see a taxiway, so I'm just going to go down 12 right, 30 left. Just going to kind of back up to the right over here, get straight, go down as far as I can, stay off the particular runway, and then just kind of back taxi over here to 30 right. I don't know the procedure here. There's not a lot of detail that I have, so if somebody knows local procedure for Bahrain, please let me know. Alright, so we'll get that sorted. We'll get the pushback moving on here pretty fast. We're flying today up to 31,000 feet, fairly direct route with an interesting kind of almost a circle to land kind of thing. I'll show you when we get there. Let's get
cockpit, Toliss driving up.
Let's get everything else moving. I'm going to start the other pieces. Again, I fly for Virtual Delta Airlines, and so I'm going to pull this off the screen over here to the side and fix what I need to do. You'll hear the
welcome to ATIS
a little bit in the, like that, just in the background. It'll take a minute for everything to get settled, and hopefully can get all this loaded up before we need to move on. So 31,000 feet with a fairly, it's not a direct route, but it is actually mostly over water.
Okay, all doors and hatches are closed. Ready to connect.
Just putting everything in, so it's basically filing the flight plan, and then getting basically some timers and stuff like that started. So okay, so that's good. Got one more. That's spad.next. That's another plugin that I use. That helps me keep all the yokes and all that stuff from Logitech, dual throttle control, and all that stuff. Kind of does some funny stuff with jerks.
So connected and bypass pin inserted. Release parking brake.
Yeah, we're not quite ready for that. Give me just another 10 seconds here. Just a quick double check of all the instruments. Make sure life is good on the no surprises over here on the yoke and pedal. All right, so we can release parking brakes. Here we go. We have all of our lights on. Again, I'll just like them all up. We'll turn the probe window heat on. That should already be on. And we'll try to make sure the no smoking sign is illuminated. Standby compass should put us a light right here so we can see any icing. Learned that one yesterday. That was kind of an interesting trick. We're going to dim the cabin lighting, or the cockpit lighting here. So we're going to make a little backup turn whenever she gets ready.
Starting pushback, and you may start engines.
Okay, so they're going to do that. We're going to do this. We're going to come down here, ignition start, and we're going to do engine number 2. We already know that APU is on and running.
Starting engine number 2.
Yes, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to start engine number 2. They're going to push us back. Again, I just warn you, it might get look a little dizzy or whatever else here. So we got N1, and we got a small climb up on our, well, now we got a small climb up on our EGT. Temperature rising. We got positive fuel flow. N2 is climbing. We'll peak out at about 21% on the N1, and then we'll let it sit. Never been to this airport, ever. Not in real life and not in a sim. And never been to Abu Dhabi in real life or in the sim. Alright, number 2 is done. Let's fire number 1. Here goes engine number 1. All we're going to do is just flip the switch. There we go.
Starting engine number 1.
Can hear the PTU there for a second. Kind of growling at the very beginning. Now you can hear the second engine spooling up. Definitely something you could feel if you're in the plane. I love sitting next to the window.
Delta Virtual Airlines, and thank you for flying with us today. Sit back, relax, and enjoy your flight.
I love sitting next to the window, but I'm more like sitting next to the window exit. Usually that's over the wing, and usually you get all that vibration. You really do know when the spoilers are out active. You really do know when the reverse thrust is on. You really do know when flaps are deployed, when gears go in, and you definitely know when there's an engine start. So, all right, 2 good starts, 2 good engine temperatures. We're going to turn the ignition switch back to normal or run. There's no no rain or anything like that out there, so we'll pull that off the page for a second so we can see. So it looks like we can just go straight down here. I don't see I'm going to go outside for.
Operation complete. Go ahead and set the parking brake.
Okay, there's our parking brake. I'm going to go out. Going to go outside for just a second just to see if we can look. It's going to get loud. Sorry about that. Oh, there is a taxiway of some sort over there. The green dots are low visibility lights leading down the taxiway. And looking off to the kind of looking off over here to the left-hand side. But we've got the airport pretty much to ourselves, so we'll go down as far as we can. We'll turn onto that runway, which will be the first one. That's the 30 left, and we'll go down to 30 right, and we'll be right there on the bottom. Alright, back in the cockpit. We'll slide over a little bit and kind of get up, sit up high in the chair. So all that's done, we're just going to. Great, thanks for a good push. So we're going to turn APU bleed off. We don't need the auxiliary power unit. We're going to turn the master switch off for that, and that green light will go off in a minute. As soon as they're clear off on the right, we'll throw the taxi light. There we go. We should be all ready to go. Just going to set the map here to only 10 nautical miles, just so that that very first bit's covered. Got our terrain. Alright, so should be all good. Yep, there we go. So a couple of clicks that the co-pilot will do that kind of let me know. So we're going to test the flight controls. Full left. We went full right. Neutral. Full up. Yep. And then I'm just going to, if you look down here, I'm just going to move the rudder pedals just a little bit just to play with them. Alright, takeoff config, normal. Release the brakes. We're going to set auto brakes to max, and we'll tell the cabin to see if they're ready. Okay. So in addition to the, I have a dual monitor setup. In addition to having a yoke, which I know is cheating for, or not cheating, it's not realistic for Airbus. I should have a left-handed throttle. I'm sorry, a left-handed joystick for that. In addition to the yoke, I have 2 throttle quadrants. One for the speed brake, which I can emulate. So that's one of the 3 positions on one on the kind of the left throttle quadrant. 2 positions for the engines. A tiller. So that's what we're going to use to drive, keep this thing straight. And then an unused one, and then I have flaps. I've tried to fix that 6 lever for something with the landing gear, and while that would be really authentic, I just haven't had good success with working that. So anybody has a secret, know how to do it, please let me know. So we're going to taxi down, like I said, as far as we can go. Kind of keep the nose on the center line there. One of the tricks I learned is if I straighten up and kind of give you that right through the center of the two displays is where we should be. So I'm definitely off to the right, let's just say. Looks like it's a wide taxiway and it's not a problem, and quite honestly you can drive on the dirt or whatever else if you want to in X-Plane or any other simulator, but it's not good for them, so I'll just keep it over here. There's a couple of plugins I do like. This this is the Toliss Airbus. This is the 321 model. There's two, the 319, 321, and they both have a companion Speedy Cockpit, and Speedy Cockpit is kind of a lifesaver. Any of these commercial jets would be a two-person crew, and it'd be really tough to manage otherwise. And this makes it a little bit more realistic if you're sitting in the left seat, I think, and you're the one flying. So I play pilot flying, and I usually play on the left-hand seat. However, when I started, I actually started over on the right-hand side. That's the first officer's chair, and really wanted to kind of keep it fairly real and learn to fly that way. It's a different vantage point. But if you're used to driving in a car in the US, you're used to driving on the left-hand side, so sitting in the left-hand seat's always a good thing. Alright, it is somewhere around 5 o'clock in the morning, so it looks like we might get a sunrise out of the trip. Sorry, we're going to get out here on the runway. So what I'm going to do is to kind of sort of be a little bit legal. We're going to turn on all the runway, or turn on all of our takeoff lights. And again, we're just going to taxi down. Probably could have done a back taxi on the actual runway, but this one's too short for me. I need about 5,000 feet to take off, so we're just going to go all the way to the end of this runway. That next nearest plane looks like it's 52 miles away. I think I can get down here to the end of the runway. I'll put a little extra gas on, so just kind of mosey on down the runway. If that flight is called a Pegasus, he's at about 10,000 feet. And he's getting closer. So at least it's not an easy jet on the runway like I had last time. Alright, flaps are already set to 1. I just need to test the takeoff config. There's usually a bit more to the takeoff config in the Airbus, but this model has just basically press it and there's not much to do. Engines are started and the parking brake's off. That's pretty much it, I think. Almost at the end of the runway, we'll line up and we'll do our last minute safety checks, and then we'll get out of here. As soon as we get going, I'll show you the map and show you where we're going. So departing out of Bahrain on 30 right, and then it's pretty much a straight. We go pretty much off the end of the runway. Tiny little left-hand turn to correct, almost runway heading. Not quite. And then we'll be where we need to be. Left-hand turn to get on to the end of 30 right. The wind is, it said 2.9 or 7 at 17 with some gusts. So pretty much going to come right down the nose, which is awesome. We'll take a peek at the winds. That'll be on the top corner of the map here in just a second. I'll show you that. Let's get around the curve and all that stuff.
Approaching 30 right.
Yep, that confirms what we know. We'll just roll here to the end.
Runway 30 right.
We can always use every extra inch of runway that we can get. But we're going to push the thrust levers all the way forward here in just a second, so it's going to be alright. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll ask, so I use Active Sky. That's the weather engine. We'll just ask Active Sky what's going on.
Oscar Bravo Bravo, India Airport information, India 0100 Zulu weather wind 317 at 5, gusting to 15, visibility 10,000, sky clear, temperature 282.18 QNH 1008, advise on initial contact, you have information, India.
Okay, not as bad as I thought. So we'll give it a little bit. We're going to go up to about, no, we're good. So we'll just leave that over on the right hand corner. Now we're going to go full throttles. I gave you the meter so you can see what we're doing. So definitely going with Mantoga. SRS, here comes 100 knots. Yoke is neutral by 100. We could still use a little rudder if we need to. Coming up on V1 and our rotate speed. Today they're exactly the same, 156. So pull back to about 15 degrees up. There we go. Alright. So it's really wanting us to make this right hand turn. Oh yeah, we got to go the opposite way. That's right. We got to go loop around the airport here. So I'm going to push the nose back down just a little bit. I'm not really ignoring what the vertical, the altitude's more important right now. So we have altitude climbing. At the S mark, we'll put our flaps. We had flaps 1 for takeoff. We'll put that in. Go ahead and kill the ground spoilers. Sorry, the spoilers are not armed anymore. We got a nice positive climb and we're going to continue. So we're going to bring back to thrust climb setting. Drop the nose. Make sure we pick up speed. There we go. So 210, 215, flaps up. It wants me to climb now. So what I'm going to do is I'll make a right hand turn. And the reason I'm going to do that is because we're going to go out over the ocean. And then we'll just bring it around. I don't want to lose too much of my speed here. If I could gain speed, I would gain speed. So 250 is where we're going to stop. I need to keep it under 250, so I'm going to have to pull back a little bit. I don't need to be 260 at 5,000 feet. Big arcing turn here. There we go, 250. That works right there. Stay. You could certainly come over here and just pull out 250 and just say, just stay at 250. That would work too. Okay, I'll get rid of this. And I'll bring up the map. Oh, look at that. That looks pretty out there. We'll put that over in the corner. Not really showing you anything right now. So I'll convert it over to nav. So what we're going to do here in just a second is I'm going to tell it to go direct to our first waypoint, TULUB. We'll draw that dotted line, we'll insert it, and then we'll click on autopilot and we'll continue to climb up. So we'll stay under at or below 10,000 feet. We'll stay at no faster than 250. and then we'll just continue on. And there's TULUB on the map. So 26 miles to go for that. 283 on the whole trip. It's 34 past the hour. We should be landing about 21 after the hour. Wheels down about 21 after. Still climbing through about 9,000 feet. So we'll just pull this down. Kind of get it a little bit out of the way. The directional stuff not quite as important as right now the speed. When we get to TULUB or Denbo or something like that, we're going to 31,000 feet, so I'll dial in 31,000 feet in just a minute. Looks real pretty off to the right there. Sun on the other side of the horizon. You hear kind of that pitch change in the engine. That's slowing down because we reached 10,000 feet and we can only go 250 knots right there. So we did kind of a big U-turn. It's alright, we're out over the water. Loving that I've got 66 frames per second over there. But there's no terrain, it's just all water and clouds. That's awesome. That doesn't happen every day. Alright, 19 more miles and we're just going to take it at TULUB. We're going to go up to, yep, so we reached 10,000 feet, so that's typically the indication. We're going to climb. I don't expect turbulence. Looking at the weather map earlier, didn't look like there was any. Wouldn't be all surprised, but that at least at 10,000 feet we go ahead and turn off the, and that's why we have a first officer doing that. We'll turn off and retract the landing gear lights, so all the lights on the bottom are off. He's already got the seatbelt sign off. Usually about 8,000 feet, so I'll just turn off the no smoking sign. It really doesn't matter. We can make the cabin dark if we wanted to, but sun's about to come up, so that too doesn't matter. Set up a little bit higher in the seat. Okay, so we're almost here at TULUB. About quite 14 more miles to go. So real quick, when we took off, we did a couple of things automatically. As soon as you heard probably a positive rate, so that means there's a positive rate of climb, so that means that as soon as that happens, the gear comes up. That could happen at 100 feet off the ground, or whatever. In smaller planes, it could even happen almost as soon as you take off, kind of thing. As soon as you know you really are trying to leave the ground. We're not going to stop the landing or anything like that. Or stop the takeoff. We're going to continue the takeoff. So we did that, and then we had to wait till we built up enough speed, and then we pulled the flaps up. The other thing that happens too is we automatically arm the spoilers, and that would be useful in case of for some reason we wanted to stop the takeoff, what's called a rejected takeoff. We didn't need that, so as soon as we take off, then that comes back down. So that's that. Alright, 9 more miles to go and we'll dial in 31,000 feet. Again, this is KLM flight 438, and according to our schedule on Delta Virtual Airlines, dva.org. With DVA, I fly for them. There's no perks that I get with Delta. They're not officially part of that organization. There's no ties to it. Just kind of copying what Delta does. This is part of a kind of a world tour. There's a series of about 19 flights I'm doing that's all around Formula One racing. So closest to the city where in which Formula One racing occurs. The last flight that was on recorded was a really quick flight in Western Europe, and this one starts kind of a two flight tour in Middle East, and then we go over to Russia or the Far Eastern Europe, I guess, and then we go back around over to Japan, China, and then down under for the last flight. The last flight's Melbourne to Sydney, Australia. Some of the flights so far have been really short, and some of them have not been really short. I've got two flights coming up that are over 1,000 miles. So, okay, here we are at TULUB. Let's just dial in 31,000 feet and hit the give it to the plane button, so that's pushing it forward. And we start a climb. And a little bit of a turn. So really quickly over to Denvo, which is pretty much kind of due east of where we are, and then Patom, P-A-T-O-M. And then further out. Basically over a whole bunch of water. Some land, but lots of water. So there's a little peninsula that we're going to fly over, and then once we leave the land here, in about when we get to, it's really about EMISA. It's coming up. It's not on. There it is on top of the map. When we get to EMISA up here, we'll be back over water. So the land below us here, kind of this a little bit darker area. Again, this is just at sunrise. I think about 5:41 local time here in the area around Bahrain. We're not using air traffic control. There's some built-in stuff for the for X-Plane. I'm not using that for. Alright, so we've gone through what's called transition altitude. That's 13,000 feet around here. And that just standardizes the thing. As you get higher and higher away from the land, the atmospheric pressure changes, so just a kind of a standard way of looking at it. They just give you a standard measurement kind of thing. So I just slide over a little bit more, make sure everybody can see this pretty sunrise we're about to fly into. We're not flying east directly, but we're about 20 degrees off of east, so we're about 115 degrees, and I suspect that it'll be off to our left, just out of view. And as a matter of fact, if you kind of look out the captain's side window there, it's a little bit like that. So we'll keep climbing. Plane does a lot of the work automatically, nothing wrong with that. About 2,000 feet per minute climb. So just we'll slow down as we get in the higher levels of the atmosphere, but we should be able to reach our climb. It's going to take us a little bit, actually. We got a little bit left to go. So we've got 24 miles to EMISA, and that's when we fly basically off of the land back over the ocean. And it's about maybe 50 more miles before we get top of climb. So if we're going from, say, 17,000 feet to 31,000 feet, that's 14,000. So 14 times 3, that should be the number of miles that it takes if we're going at basically a 3-degree angle. That's important really on the descent more so than it is on the climb, unless you're going to take so long to climb or so high to climb that you barely get to your desired altitude before you have to start descending. But on the descent side, so if we have to go from 31,000 feet all the way to, say, 1,000 feet, the difference is 30. So it would be 30 times 3, so 90 miles to descend to pattern altitude or whatever. Just a really quick check, you can kind of look at it. There's markers that'll tell you when we're going to reach the top of climb, so that's where we wanted to go at 31,000 feet. Today we're just going directly straight up. Hey, the sun's peeking up out of the window over there. There it is, right there. was pretty when it was all that purple and stuff. So it'll start to get bright here. The X-Plane and the way that the light's rendered and all that will fill the cockpit as the sun comes up. You'll actually have some shadows and things like that that you would normally kind of expect in those early morning or late afternoon, like in a car or something like that. So kind of look around the cabin here in just a second. You'll see be some brighter areas over there where the co-pilot's supposed to be sitting and all that. Alright, so we're making okay progress. We're 224 nautical miles from our destination, Abu Dhabi. We are 45 minutes past the hour, and we're due to touch down about 23 past the hour, and then at least 7 minutes to get to the gate and get everything turned off. So about another 45 minutes on the flight. So a couple of things. Let's just tour the Airbus here real quick. We did a little bit of this other. One of the add-ons that I really love is this thing called AVTab. So we can type in, we're going to OMAA. So I can use my real keyboard, or I can use the keyboard here built in. We'll search for it. Tells us a little bit about it. It's down at 83 feet, the airport elevation. And if we click on that little icon there, we can actually look at our arrival and get a little information about it. And we are on the Guido arrival, GIDO. GIDO 3A. There it is right there. I had to look for a second. It's an RNAV, so that's a kind of a precision. Precision is kind of a bad word, but it is a precision approach. All right, so let's look up at the top. Transition level is now 15,000 feet. So there's a bit where we're going to have to put that in, a couple of places, and definitely remember that. So 15,000 feet. Here's the kind of the path to get there. So we are going to come in on of Guido here over, and let's just double check if that's the right pathway. Yep, at RIBUV, so right there. And then we kind of do this box thing. It's a little odd, but whatever. You'll see when we get closer on, it'll be obvious on the map. So again, 250 knots below 10,000 feet, that's the max. We've got to be at or below 12,000 feet when we get to this GIDO thing. There's Tomdo is between 8 and 10,000 feet, so kind of the sandwich. What's in between is what your altitude is. Above 5,000 there, and so it's just kind of a circling to land kind of thing. There's some holds and other information on here. What to do if you don't have, if you lost communications or whatever else. And then the other one that we want to look at is we're going to do a ILS approach to runway 13 right. Always want to double check that before I click on anything. So if it was really bad weather over there, we'd switch over to 13 left, but we'll just take 13 right. That was what was kind of the assigned to me in a sense. And we're going to come in, pretty much just land straight. So these maps tell you a fair amount about, this is kind of your waypoints and distance between and what other navigation aids you have. And then this one's kind of, so that's more of a lateral or the map, and then this below is more about vertical. So we're going to come down to 3,000 feet by this Canil, and then we get to Sokov, and then we'll come down the glide slope, and that'll be instrument approach into Abu Dhabi. And then if we miss, then we go back up to 4,000 feet and try again. So hopefully we won't do that today. The weather's as good as it's supposed to be over there. It should be a fairly easy. Fairly easy landing. Alright, we're almost at 26,000 feet. On our way from Bahrain to Abu Dhabi. So some of the other tools that you can use as a flight simmer, Active Sky handles the weather, so it's supposed to take some 25,000 points around the world, and plus interpolation in between the points, and maybe it's more points than that, but it's definitely 25,000-ish airports, 25,000, and then it pulls together and creates clouds. If you know there's a particular cloud or rain or whatever else in a location, this may be off, both in in time and distance a little bit, due to that interpolation between points. The you can track what looks like fairly real-time weather on the Active Sky map. Active Sky's not free, but it's well worth the money to have it, so that you have something that looks like fairly real weather. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll go and get the real world weather just to compare, and it's exactly spot on. So some of the prep work, how I prepare the cockpit, so to speak, is I'll go get the flight. That's usually again out of a Delta schedule off of the Delta Virtual Airlines website. I'll sign up for that particular flight, so I'll schedule myself for that flight. They give us the times, but we don't have to fly the exact time. That'd be kind of weird if I had to get up at 3 a.m. to fly a flight or something. You can fly it any time, any day, whether it's actual or not. And then we use software to track the flight, and as tracking the flight, it allows us to keep up with our miles, how many passengers, and then also it's a lot of safety stuff, weights, takeoff speeds, landing speeds, things like that. Did you go over 250 knots at below 10,000 feet? And you don't get points taken off or anything like that, but it doesn't look great if you have a bunch of that on there. So I go get the flight, and then I come back to go to SimBrief, simbrief.com. SimBrief is a free web application where you put in where you're going and how many passengers you want to take, how much fuel or whatever you want to have. And then when you do that, you have it can help you compute the route, give you a route. So the route that I'm going today is all from SimBrief. Here's the sun up over the left hand side. Let's just stop for a second and look at that. That looks cool with that reflection on the water. So when we're so we plan it through SimBrief. SimBrief kind of spits out a bunch of stuff, tells me how much fuel I'll need, tells me how many, how much weight of the passengers and things like that. And there's certain weights that have to be entered into and certain setup that has to be entered into the Airbus. It needs to know, the computer inside needs to know, not necessarily how many passengers, what's the weight. So that's calculated based on an average weight of the passengers plus the known weight of baggage, or the estimated weight of baggage or cargo if it's known. So then you pull all that stuff together, and then I take notes, so I have all that stuff in a notebook, and then I'll put it in the iPad. I use ForeFlight, which is a paid app for Apple iPads. I use ForeFlight to track the flight. It has a small piece of software that attaches to the to X-Plane to give my GPS position, and then I'll put everything in the iPad. That also gives me access to real world weather, routes that have been used or issued in the past. And then I also use the iPad for the programming the computer, which is this guy. So everything goes in the computer, and everything. So this isn't, not every step has to be programmed. It really kind of depends on what it is, but then it'll tell us, so our estimated estimated GPS offset is very small right now. We're gonna have to put in the weather when we land, so I've already kind of preloaded that, and it can give us some information about how much extra fuel we're carrying on board and things like that. So flight plan was already put in before I started the video. So once we load that, and then we'll use that. It was airport VS. That was the map of the airport. We'll use that to guide us and tell us where we're going to go, how to get down to the runway, and all that kind of stuff. All right, this is going to be really fast. So we're just now hitting 31,000 feet, and we're only 148 miles away from Abu Dhabi, and we're right here at, just at 31,000 feet. And look, in about 25 miles, we've got to start a descent. So the total trip was only 244 miles. Technically, if it's only 244, if you add 2 zeros, that's really about how high you should go. I should have pulled up to about 25,000 feet and left it, but we're traveling east. Anything east of in any direction east, you should go in odd thousands of feet. So that really, at 25,000 feet, we could have leveled off. The only advantage is, and this is our advantage here, is we have a 45 knot tailwind that's pretty much pushing almost behind the plane, pushing us. So our ground speed is actually faster than our total airspeed. So I'm putting 460 in on the meter, so to speak, and we're actually being pushed, as you can see, 37 more knots, just from the wind effect. All right, so we're going to descend. Again, this is a fast flight. Looks like we're going to go all the way down to 3,000 feet before we land. Our last waypoint before we land will be 3,000 feet, so we'll come back over here and we'll dial in 3,000 feet. Really want to do this about 10 miles before the down arrow, the descent arrow. So that's about right. What happens is the Airbus computers have a computed vertical path for us. And that's this green dot here on the primary display on the left of the screen here, and the arrow indicates where we need to start descending, really descending. So there's two types of descent, or more than two types, but what we're going to experience today is two types. One is I descended a little bit early than the profile, so it's only going to descend at about 1,000 feet per minute. That's what this green 10 is right here. That's 1,000 feet per minute descent. It's in the down direction, and it's 10. As soon as we get over that arrow and we get lock onto the descent path, then we'll start to descend a lot faster. Usually somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2,000 to 3,000 feet per minute, so 20 to 30 on the meter down here under the bottom. If we go any steeper than that, we really are late, and we need to slow down and try to get down safely, but don't do a whole lot of crazy stuff to do it. Going down at 4,500 feet per minute is probably not ideal. That probably would hurt your ears and tilts the plane in an odd angle and all that. Spills drinks in first class. You don't want to do that. Okay, here's the green ball dropping down. Ideally, we want that right here on the level with this yellow line right next to the altitude indicator. You can hear the engines kind of whining back. They're throttling back. Did we go back to idle? Nope, we're not idle yet. We still got a little gas going, but they're definitely idling back. So we're doing about 2,900, almost 3,000 feet per minute descent. That's pretty quick, but that's okay. 114 miles to go. It's right at the top of the hour. We're planning to land in Abu Dhabi. Make sure we're going to the right airport. Yep, Abu Dhabi at 21 after the hour. So about 20 more minutes flying, and we'll be on the ground. Oh yeah, for some reason now we're going to go down at 5,000 feet per minute. That's just great. Thankfully that doesn't last very long. I don't think that's real. There's some odd calculation as to why we would do that. Now watch, we'll dip back up, so our descent will stop, and then we'll go back down. There's something squirrely in the calculations here. Had we stayed at about 3,000 feet per minute descent rate, we weren't going too fast. That wasn't what that was all about. So we'll get it figured out. This is a game. We're just trying to play by the rules of the game here. Alright, just about 100 miles out from Abu Dhabi. We've got an interesting approach here coming up, so after this next waypoint, start looking for kind of like this, looks like the number 2 if you're writing in block style, or kind of a backward S, and that'll be our, I guess, just a series of almost like S turns. Again, never been to the airport in real life or in the sim, never had to fly any sort of approach like this, so we'll get there. 22 miles to go for our next waypoint. And we should be on time. We should be down to about 15,000. The computers tell me we'll be, oh sorry, about 16,000 feet by the time we hit this next waypoint. And then we got to go down to 10,000 feet and then continue on down to 8,000 feet here in just a few minutes after that. Okay, we're inside 100 miles, so we're going to go ahead and turn the instrument landing system lights function on, so we'll have that on. That's all we need to do right now. Probably not a bad idea, just go ahead and hit the auto brake just so we know we have it. We've been had the engine running about 51 minutes and 31.5 minutes in flight. Again, just a few minutes after the hour. That's the time in Zulu as I'm recording it. It's 10:02 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in the U.S. on Cinco de Mayo, matter of fact. So we got about 20 more minutes of flying time. And so you can kind of see this over on the map. You can kind of see this racetrack pattern. I'm not sure what that's for, other than just to bring me down from altitude or something. It's funny S turns, but whatever. Alright, we'll zoom in on the map a little bit. It'll just be easier to see those turns. Alright, about 18,000 feet. We normally turn the wing lights on below 18,000 feet. They're already on. Again, it's a game. It's a sim. I'll leave them on. We don't necessarily need the APU on. We'll just turn the electrics on when we get there. Otherwise, you could potentially start thinking about that now. And the process to start it is to start. That's the master switch. Run. After 10 seconds, make sure the flap's open. Make sure it's all good. And then once everything is actually up and going about a minute later, then we could actually use the APU bleed. All that looks good for right now. The good part about it, the co-pilot will take care of our lights once we get below 10,000 feet, and he'll turn on the seatbelt signs for us. Sit back, relax, enjoy the descent. One of the really neat things about this AVI tab over here is once we're on it and it's in this section here is not to scale as it says, but once we get over here it'll be to scale, and then you can actually check, make sure you're flying the whatever pattern we have to fly here to get there. So it's just kind of an interesting thing that you can take a paper chart, basically a digital chart, but you can take a chart and put yourself right on top of it. So it's a little bit of a left-hand turn. 16,000 feet and descending. See, there's some interesting turns up there with some, these are what's called constraints. So this is the constraint mode. 4,000 feet, 210 knots. This airplane has trouble getting to that, so I'm going to have to help it a little bit. I'll throw extend the speed brakes and all that kind of stuff to get there. Alright, we're at transition altitude. So we're going to, again, this is a kind of a bit of a cheat. We should have the weather and should know that. We'll get the weather in just a second, but we just hit a button and it automatically gives us the QNH. So it's kind of a low pressure system. Low pressure here, 29.74 inches in mercury or 1,007 hectopascals. So we'll just dial in the weather just to make sure we have it. We're 69 miles out, and again about 15 minutes or so to go. So we'll just listen to the weather real quick at Abu Dhabi.
Oscar, Mike, Alpha, airport information, Mike, 0100, Zulu, weather, wind, 088 at 3, visibility, 10,000, sky clear, temperature, 23, dew point, 18 QNH, 1007, advise on initial contact, you have information, Mike.
Okay, so if we were talking to air traffic control and checking in with them, we'd have information Mike. So for us it'd be KLM 438 passing through 13,000 feet with Mike, and then they tell us what to do next. Alright, so here's our here's our S turns. This is going to be fun. The one thing that you have to remember, this is a big airplane, and so doing a number of turns, we definitely don't want to go slow. We'll stall or something stupid if we're down at, say, 150 knots or whatever else. So we're going to go down, the next step would be down to 230 knots after this waypoint coming up. And the little purple dots here are kind of decel points, so they'll actually should slow the plane down for us. We've got to get down to, should be at or below 10,000 feet here at Tomdo. We're going to be at or below, or at. We're probably going to be a little fast too. Probably could help us a little bit, slow us down just a tad. Typically what will happen is the plane will continue down toward 10,000 feet, and just above 10,000 feet we'll pull back. So again, we're at about 1,500 feet per minute descent rate, and watch for us as we approach 10,000 feet. It should shallow out and even go 100 or 2 feet above, and then we should we'll just zoom in a little bit more, and we should start to slow down. We're within 300 feet, so we're actually okay on that. We're not going to be within, we're not going to be 250 when we cross 10,000 if we don't slow down. So I'm going to extend the speed brakes. That should slow us down. We should be slow right there. Yep. No, you shouldn't accelerate. You should be decelerating. So we'll dial 250 in and we'll see what happens. We got the speed brakes extended. We really need to be slower than this. There we go. Good airplane. We're still on the edge of being legal right there, a little faster than 250. Alright, so that's where we need to be, 250 on the nose. Stop right there. The next waypoint coming up, we've got to be down to 230 and above 5,000 feet. So we should kind of sort of descend down to 230 and get down to 5,000 feet. A lot of times we'll get helped with by ATC, or the ATC would say this is a standard terminal arrival route or star. So it just would say descend via the star. So we'd have to follow all the restrictions on the star. And the star was the map I showed just a second ago. So we're going to stay at 240. Okay, well, we don't have to be there yet. But if you can slow down just a little bit more, that'd be alright with me. We'll lose a little bit of speed here in this turn. 10 minutes after the hour, we're landing at 22 after the hour, 45 miles to go on our way to Abu Dhabi. Kind of this S-turn. So it's really, we're facing the direction in which we want to go. Now we're going to turn 90 degrees. Eventually we're going to turn 180 and fly away from the airport. And we're going to turn 90 more degrees. And then again 90 more degrees to get back toward the airport. And we really should be slowing down right here too, by the way, boys and girls. We really should be down to 230. So throttles descent, throttle descent, that's kind of a mode that the throttle's in there. And then there's some protection here so we don't stall. It's just being a little bit persnickety in the turn. I'm okay if it's in the fussing at me a little bit. I mean, a little faster in that turn. But when we get out of that turn, we shouldn't be fast. So let's bring it down to 230, like we're supposed to. And eventually we'll go down to 210, which is kind of common. But more importantly, we got to get our speed down. Yeah, we're going to be alright. We're just making some turns. So now this is where we start to fly away from the airport. We've got to get down to 5,000 feet and we've got to slow down a little bit more. Probably at that point, to get to 210, I'm going to put flaps 1 in. That'll definitely help us get down. The other thing I could do is speed brake's still out and it's got throttle up, so it fusses at you. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and arm the speed brake. We'll be alright with that. That'll get us ready in case those will extend automatically when we land. We'll go ahead and arm it for the activate the approach phase. That'll start to slow us down as well. It'll tell the plane, oh yeah, that's right, we're going to land, aren't we? Yup, we are. So we really need to slow down some more. And we really need to be down to 210 this time. No, don't use idle, just slow down. It's not hard. Alright, so I throw flaps 1 in, that usually kind of slows us down, or starts the process of us slowing down. I had the speed brakes out, so I got to go back and rearm the speed brakes. May have to use them again, who knows. Okay, now we got some shadows in because we're going the opposite way. Kind of going back really northwest now. And we're coming down to 5,000 feet. The other thing that could slow us up a bit is our landing gear. We're slow enough we can drop the landing gear. That adds lots of turbulence, and that'll get us to where we want to go. So we'll just give it back to managed speed. It'll slow down now. We'll be okay. We're a little fast. It'll be alright. We're going to lose a lot of energy in these 2 turns. And I'm not going to set the flaps to 2 yet, because it'll be right at 210 if we stay right there at that S speed. So we can pull out the meter. Now we're going to go too slow. Watch that. Let's hold it at 210. And the constraints are telling us we've got this next waypoint and then the next one, and we still have to hold it at 210. And a lot of times that's just for spacing. You got more. I mean, there's no other aircraft out here other than that one plane we've seen about 40 miles out. Nobody else is here. It's whatever, 6:15 in the morning, so we're the first flight of the day kind of thing. Alright, 26 miles to go. We've reached our 4,000 point. We'll pretty much hold this for the next little bit. Keep our speed at 210. There's a few other planes flying around. There's one ahead of us about 30 miles out. There's some more that are coming around that'll be a little further than that. Okay, so now we're down to 210, and we're going to hold here at 4,000 feet. So we're in the approach phase. We didn't have any chance of icing. Temperatures outside are warm enough. Yeah, we're in the Middle East. 27 degrees is the higher number of the two. Definitely well above 10 degrees. 10 degrees Celsius, you think about arming that. Look at there, there's an airport. Airport in sight. We're going 13 right. Here we go. So we're going to go there. Just off the screen. Okay, so we're going to descend down, so now we can come probably below that. And we're 20 miles out. So the airport should be right on the top of the map there. Yep. It's coming right at the top of our map at 20 miles. Pretty soon we should get our have our indication that the approach is active. Yep, we just got it. Look at that. So we'll arm the localizer. That'll straighten us up from a lateral position thing. We'll descend down to 3,000 feet, and then we'll go for this very next step. So we should be starting to descend here in a second. I'll probably go ahead and give us flaps 2. That slowed us down a lot. So our landing speed's going to be based on the wind. It's only 3 knots. It's not really a major crosswind component. We're landing at about 130 degrees, and this is 88 degrees, only at 3 knots.
1,000 to go.
It's wanting flaps full here. We can really just hit flaps 3. It's a little early for flaps full. I'm probably early with all this. Somebody's going to tell me how to do it right one day. Our landing speed is 144 knots, so that's where this purple triangle is here. So that should be good. A little faster if we have any icing, a little faster if we have any wind or crosswind components. Runway in sight, plenty of visibility. I am going to do an auto land. Let the computer handle everything but the very last little bit of it. Alright, this part of it is just weird. It starts to climb just a little bit. It makes no sense. Alright, so we're established on the localizer. I'm going to arm the glide slope and the second autopilot. We're just a little bit more than 10 miles from the airport. It's not up here on our display, and our display's 2.5, 5, 7.5, 10 miles. So that's 10 miles right there at the top. There's some traffic out there. Hopefully it's not on the runway. Gonna move this out for just a second. Let's just see if we can zoom out and see what anybody is. That looks like us right there. There's some traffic out there, so. Yep, he's at 0 feet, so he means he's landed. Well, it looks like he's maybe vacating. There he is right there. See the little Now we're on the glide slope. Flaps full. Okay, that's really zoomed in, sorry. But that just tells you, you can zoom in on that. So right now I've got a clear runway. That guy was coming off. Alright, that's just the effect of being zoomed in really far, sorry. It looks like we got a clear runway. If we don't, when we get to 250, then we'll fly the approach. We'll go up to 4,000 feet and do a missed approach. We'll grab the last little bit of weather. So the pressure hasn't changed any. And we can look here at 2,500 feet. We're on the glide slope, we're on the localizer. So that's the vertical and horizontal pieces. The wind's behind us by about 8 knots. It's supposed to calm down and actually revert to all the way around to the east almost. So it should be coming off kind of our left, almost angled off of our left about 30 degrees or so. But again, it's supposed to only be 3 knots. So sad part about the weather information that we got with the recording is that's only updated every hour. So what you would get is when we checked in with the tower and got clearance to land, they would give us the winds. So whatever the current winds are. Typically when I get really close to the ground, I usually count on what's here on the display. It's reading it off of meters on the plane, and taking into account where the wind's coming from. As long as it's not more than 10 knots that's pushing us, we can land. Otherwise we got to find another runway. Alright, so let's just zoom in real quick, make sure. I want about a 4 mile final. We've got 2 whites and 2 reds. That means we're on the proper glide slope. Nobody's on the runway. Nobody looks like they're close to the runway. So it looks like we have it cleared. ATC would otherwise tell us you are cleared to land, or turn out, do some S maneuvers to, get that other plane off, or you're gonna have to, you got stuff on the runway, you're gonna have to turn around and come back, or fly a missed approach or whatever. We're looking right down the barrel. Let's just move this over here. The map's going to be less important here in just a second, so we'll get rid of that. 1,000 above the terrain, that's using the radar. And we're slowing down to 144 knots. We're still a little faster than that. Just a quick wind check down here. Yeah, the winds have started to revert back. And they're only 2 miles coming, what now will probably be the east by the time we land. Give a little more view out the window there. 500 feet to go. I set minimums at 250, so you'll hear that call out here in just a second. Hand on the flight controls, hand on the throttles. Because if we need to go around, we're going to push them straight forward. So we're going to continue. 200 feet. Coming up on 150. At 100 over the end. I'm going to throttle back at about 45. Here we go. Throttle's coming back. And then we flared. And we're going to push our nose down. Alright. We'll put the reversers in. So that was a buttery landing. We'll see. Whatever that means. Looks like we're going to kind of come off to the right here in just a second. We'll take this one right here. So we'll knock the reversers out. We'll bring up our flaps. Add a little brake, slow us down. This is a high-speed exit, and we're probably about 40 or so knots. So 37. That's good. Not too fast. Okay, here we are in Bahrain.
Radio altimeter alarm. Speed check. Flaps 1.
On behalf of everyone else in Virtual Airlines, thank you for flying with us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Okay, so our first officer really thought that, I guess we just woke him up from a nap or something. Not sure what that was all about. That happens to me sometimes. Oh, the lights just went out. Alright, so we're just going to come across this intersection right here, and we're going to, we may just park out here at one of these stands. I'm just going to stop short right here. or at least kind of creep along. That way it won't run off the runway. We'll check and see if we can find us a put our destination in OMAA. I'm probably going to do a turn on this and come back out. And what I mean by that is I have to land at both of these airports. So I've landed here at Abu Dhabi. I've got to take off from Abu Dhabi and land back over at Bahrain. So pretty much go right back over the path I just left. Alright, looks like we can just park right here. There's some stands here. This'll do. Oh look, that plane has no wheels. I love it when that stuff happens. How is that possible? Is that a display? Is that the plane on display? Alright, just quick look, make sure I'm not running into anybody. And we'll get parked over here to a stand. They can bring us fuel and get our passengers off. I'm just being a realist here. It's good enough. Alright, ground spoilers are still armed. We'll kill that. I should have done that a long time ago. And they're back in. I thought I did that already.
Do you want the APU?
Yeah, we'll take the APU. Why not? So we'll start the APU. And then we'll ask for some APU bleed. See if we can get that in a second. Alright, the question is, where do we want to go? There's a terminal down that way. Here's some pretty planes. Let's go down this way. So that was a pretty quick flight. Thanks for riding along with us. It's one of my favorite planes to fly. Toliss does a really nice job on their brand new A321. It flies a lot like their A319, a little smaller but kind of more powerful, almost the stockier version of the 321. Part of the Airbus A320 family goes from 318 to 321. The 321 actually has 2 extra fuel tanks, which I'm going to use in a future flight when I fly from Paris to Moscow. It's just for fun, but it'll take almost 14 tons or 14 tons of metric tons of fuel to make it happen. Alright, somebody's got to play chicken here. I'll stop. Please go ahead. So there's a terminal over here. It looks like I've got to... Oh, seriously? Sometimes I wish in real life you could just run over them. Not in real life, in the sim. I could run through them and nothing actually happens. So I see a spot for us over here. It's off to the left. There's a KLM that's got some broken wheels or something. That looks funny. Nice shadows on the ground. Still running 46 FPS. Hey, we'll take that. I'm really surprised that I was able to stream and run this flight, but this length of time seems to be about right. For my computer doesn't get overheated or whatever, and it gets overclocked to 5 gigs, so I don't really have a reason to complain. That's just funny. Are they loading from the back first or something? Alright. Make sure he's out of the way too. Okay. I don't know which gate we were in, but we were in a gate. I guess that's all that matters, huh? So we'll just pick, this is for 737s and 757s, we'll just pick the longest one up there. And probably right behind us, so we'll put the parking brakes on right there. Alright, let's just double check. Strobes are off, beacon lights off. We'll just go ahead and turn our probe window heat off. We do have an APU on. We'll let folks know they can get up and get their stuff over in the overhead. Turn on the dome lights if we can. And look at there, we're going to have hot brakes. So looking at the brake temperatures, we got some hot brakes. So we won't be able to turn around fast anyway. We'll just have to leave it. Everything else is fine. We can turn off the flight directors and the landing system. We never use the radar. Flaps are up. speed brakes are good. TCAS traffic collision avoidance is off, and we'll power down our engines. Okay. So we'll just go outside for a quick tour. A little bit loud, so let's do something about that real quick. So here we are at early morning. We've landed at Abu Dhabi after taking off from Bahrain. It was 240-ish miles. We got up to flight level 3100 or flight level 310. It's a big bird we're next to that has no wheels. Yep, I don't know what's up with the wheels on this. So we're going to make the turn and go back out. So whichever gate we're in, oh, I could park up a little bit closer, couldn't I? Look at that. Oh well. They can extend the jetway. Taking off from Bahrain and landing about maybe a little more than 45 minutes or so. Kind of followed a pretty interesting route on the arrival. Kind of a really almost like a double S to slow down and get down to the altitude at the airport and then land. Pretty unsuccessful. I mean, a pretty uneventful flight. Computer worked. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.